we are following a big decision for Vice President Kamala Harris. CBS News has now confirmed that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who has a history of successfully appealing to moderate voters, is the Democratic nominee's choice to be her running mate. Harris will publicly announce the pick shortly before kicking off a multi-day tour of battleground states starting today in Philadelphia. Walz has been the governor of Minnesota for 6 years now. He's a seasoned politician and is familiar how Congress works, serving 6 terms in the House of Representatives and sitting as a ranking member of the Veterans Affairs Committee. Sean Sullivan joins me now with reaction to all this. He is a CBS News political contributor and campaign editor for The Washington Post. Thanks for being with us, Sean. I want to start with asking you, what can you tell us about Walz and what he brings to the Harris campaign?
You know, it's interesting because he is not really a household name outside of the political sphere. And typically, in past campaigns, we've seen, presidential candidates tend to pick, in some cases, candidates who have more exposure on the national stage. He's somebody who's known within sort of political circles, but not known nationally. So he's going to have to introduce himself. He's somebody who seems very comfortable being a visible surrogate on television. You know, he sort of catapulted into the mix here over the last few weeks with a lot of television interviews where he went pretty aggressively after the Republican ticket led by Donald Trump. And he went sort of viral at times by using the word weird to describe the Republicans. And that's something that a lot of Democrats have picked up on. So I think that the Harris campaign is looking to him as a Midwestern governor who they hope can help, spread the appeal of the ticket in some of these key Midwestern states, Wisconsin and Michigan being the 2 most important ones. But somebody who they can count on to be out there on TV, on the campaign trail, on the stump, going toe-to-toe with Republicans, with former President Donald Trump and with Senator J.D. Vance, who is his counterpart as the Republican vice presidential nominee.
And Sean, that weird phrase that he coined seemed to really stick. And I wonder what the impact of that move was.
And, it'll be interesting to see when we sort of unravel the whole backstory of how Harris got to choosing Walz, which, again, when you go to the beginning of this process, there weren't a lot of Democrats who were saying, OK, Walz is the obvious pick. He is sort of, a surprise, not so much in the last 48 hours, but if you look, a couple of weeks ago. And you're right, that phrase really is something that Democrats have picked up on across the board. You're seeing members of Congress use it. You're seeing celebrities who support the Harris campaign use it. You're seeing it as sort of a central tenet of their campaign argument against the Republicans. They seem to think that it's an effective argument, and he's been at the forefront of that. So it'll be interesting to see how much that actually factored in to Harris's decision and how much we see one or both of them potentially use it tonight at this introductory event that they're going to have in the evening.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, Sean, because we got to look at sort of that final shortlist in the days that led up to today. Other than, having some pretty huge progressive policy accomplishments, what sets him apart?
Well, as I said earlier, one part of this is his abilities on TV, which I think have impressed a lot of Democrats. But I think his overall political profile is one that impressed a lot of Democrats, too. He's a Midwesterner. He's a veteran. He's a gun owner. I think he was seen as somebody, even though he has in many cases embraced policies that liberals have championed, he's seen as somebody who can also appeal to moderates by some Democrats. Before he was governor, he served in the House, and he was able to win in a district that was more Republican leaning. So even though Minnesota as a whole is not seen as a swing state, it's still one that leans Democratic. He's somebody that Democrats say, hey, look, he's proven his ability to sort of win on more purple or red terrain. But the challenge for him is going to be, nationally. He's not a well-known public figure in the way that some of the other Democrats that were in the mix as finalists even were. And we're already seeing, the Trump campaign and Republican allies gearing up to aggressively go after him. And that's a risk when you pick somebody who's relatively unknown. You have to introduce yourself. You have to introduce that person if you're the campaign. And you also have to contend against the opposition when you have an American public that may not have really deeply ingrained feelings about Tim Walz in this case.
Well, this big battleground tour that's being launched today, that will be his first big chance to sort of meet and greet American voters across the country, especially in the states that matter. I wonder what voters will want to know about him.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, he's somebody who has both been around politics, but has also sort of worked outside of politics. I think this will be the first time that a lot of the American public is going to see and hear from him. You know, when you talk to political strategists in both parties about the importance of a running mate, there's a lot of debate about, you know, how much does this ultimately matter in the long term in terms of how people vote. And it's really this early period when the pick is made and when they introduce themselves. And then the second big moment is a vice presidential debate, if that actually happens, if he actually is debating J.D. Vance. Those are the two big moments. So right now we're in moment one of those two big moments, and there's a lot of risk. I mean, we saw on the Republican side with J.D. Vance, you know, he attracted some criticism early in his first few campaign events. And so the question for Walz is, you know, what will that introduction look like? Will it be a smooth one? Will it be one that impresses people? Or will it be rocky? He has not been tested on a stage this big before, not even close. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, lots to follow here. Sean Sullivan, stand by with us. Thank you for that insight.